The message came without warning. It arrived at the edge of council space, buried inside a pulse of strange radiation no one had ever seen before. At first, the scanners thought it was an error, some kind of static or a dying star's final scream, but then it repeated. Every 6 hours, exactly the same pulse, the same signal, and buried deep inside it, a voice. Human, the Council's communication core on Zalora Prime, went silent as their translators worked. It took them 6 days to decode the message. The words were simple, terrifying. Vega Prime. Stands, do not approach. You will not survive. Vega Prime was supposed to be gone. The human colony had vanished 2 centuries ago during the last war. Official records showed it was destroyed by a rogue asteroid strike. No survivors, no ships, no hope. The Galactic Council had believed the humans were finished after that. Earth retreated. The other colonies went quiet. Slowly, the threat of humanity faded from the minds of most alien species. The few who remembered their brutality and genius were now old, their warnings ignored. But now, Vega Prime was backhand. It was sending threats. High Chancellor Rilzek of the Thalzan Empire called an emergency meeting at the Central Assembly Hall. 12 species attended. All stared at the giant holodisplay above the table. The signal repeated again and again. Cold, calm, human. Are we certain this is real? The Viraki scientist hissed, his many eyes blinking nervously. The Kelron War Admiral growled, "It's human. That's their code. That's their style. Arrogant, short, always direct." A Grold diplomat leaned forward. "And we must respond immediately. Send a fleet. Investigate. This cannot go unanswered." But Rilzik raised a clawed hand. "No, we send a probe first. 1 drone. If it returns, we move forward. We reevaluate." The vote passed. The probe was launched. It took 4 days to reach Vega Prime. As it entered the system, the Council watched its feed live. The planet looked alive. Vega Prime had blue skies, tall cities, orbiting platforms, ships. Everything they had thought destroyed was somehow rebuilt and upgraded. Black towers lined the continents. Massive energy fields shimmered around them. Strange shapes floated in the upper atmosphere. Not satellites. Not known tech. And then the signal cut out. The probe was gone. No explosion. No weapon fire. Just gone. Long silence filled the council hall. Then the Thalzan Chancellor spoke again. "Prepare a recon ship. Crew of 6. Let's see what we're really dealing with." The recon ship Argon's Light launched within the week. It was fast, silent, and built for stealth. Its crew were the best in the Council's fleet. Trained, disciplined, and heavily armed. They entered Vega Prime's orbit at 0300 Standard Time. At 0301, their transmission went dead. 6 hours later, the ship returned. Drifting, the Council scrambled to recover it. Docked above Zalora Prime. A boarding team entered. No crew, no signs of battle, no blood, no broken systems. Everything looked untouched, but one thing had changed. Inside the main corridor, now carved into the wall with what looked like a human blade, were 4 words. "Do not come here." That was all. Panic spread quickly. News of the incident reached every major system. The word Vega became a forbidden topic on some worlds. On others, it was the only thing people talked about. Some believed it was a trick. Others believed it was humanity's return, but no one truly knew the truth. Then, a second message was intercepted. This one was different. It wasn't sent through standard channels. It came through subspace ripples, something only human science had once used during the old wars. The message was short. "The veil is lifted. Do not test the silence." The Council didn't know what it meant, but the oldest members did. They remembered the Terran. Veil Project, a dark matter experiment Earth had tried centuries ago. It was supposed to open stable gates using dark matter and gravity. The Council believed it had failed. The humans had gone quiet after testing it near Vega Prime. Everyone assumed it killed them all. Now, maybe it had worked. The council debated. What to do next? Some demanded diplomacy. Others wanted to send a larger force. One Resta, Hernekeven, threatened to declare war on Earth again, believing it to be behind all of this, but the humans never replied. Not once. Then came the final sign, something no one could ignore. On the third moon of Relinor 5, a hidden human relay station activated. It had been buried in rock for 200 years. It sent out one message, and only one dot coordinates. The location pointed directly to a dark zone in the Vega system, a place where no ship returned. This time, Council had to act. They sent a battle cruiser, the Sun Spear, escorted by 2 destroyers and 3 fast escorts. A small but powerful task force. The journey took 12 days. They arrived in system. Nothing responded. They scanned the planet. Still nothing. Then, just as they locked targeting sensors on the surface, the stars changed. One by one, black shapes began appearing in the sky. Silent, motionless, huge, human ships. But not like the ones from the past. These weren't made of metal. They seemed to bend the light around them. Black holes floating in space. No energy readings. No life signs. But they were there. Dozens. The Sun Spear attempted to hail them. No answer. Then the ships moved, not fast, not aggressive, just repositioning, forming a perfect circle around the Council's fleet. Then came the pulse. One burst of energy, pure dark matter. The Sun Spear systems shut down instantly. Lights died. Weapons froze. Even time itself seemed to slow. The escorts began spinning out of control. No explosions. No damage. Just silence. Then the human spoke. There. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere. A calm synthetic tone. This is not an act of war. This is a demonstration. Vega Prime is sovereign. Do not interfere. And just like that, the dark ships vanished. When the Council ships regained control, they were far from Vega Prime, drifted millions of kilometers away. It was clear now, humanity had not died, they had evolved. And now, the galaxy would never be the same. The skies over Vega Prime were empty again, but the fear lingered. Every major news network across the galaxy ran the same story. Human colony returns from the dead. Armed with impossible tech, on the outer colonies, riots broke out. Merchants refused to send shipments near Vega space. Smugglers avoided the route entirely. The Galactic Council met again. This time, the room was tense. The footage from the Sun Spear had been reviewed 100 times. No one could explain what the dark matter pulse was. It didn't destroy anything. It didn't even damage their systems permanently. It simply shut them down, temporarily. But that wasn't the most frightening part. It was how the human ships moved. They didn't burn fuel. They didn't make sound. They just appeared like shadows that decided to step into the light, smooth, silent, cold. High Chancellor Rilzek stood before the council table. "We need answers," he said. "Not fear, not panic. We will send a diplomatic envoy. Protected, yes, but peaceful. This must be done carefully." The vote passed narrowly. 3 ships were chosen, 1 science vessel, 1 escort frigate, and a neutral diplomatic cruiser. On board were members of 5 species, trained in human history, fluent in Terran dialects, and equipped with the latest translation tech that they left for Vega Prime under heavy encryption. They never arrived. 5 days later, only one of the 3 ships returned. It drifted into orbit above Zalora Prime with no power, no crew, and no signs of battle. It was the escort frigate Lancer's Dawn. All logs had been wiped. All systems were fried. The air was breathable. The food was untouched. Even the emergency lights were working. But the crew were gone, not dead, not taken. Gone, on the main bridge. Wall carved with something sharp and deliberate were the same 4 words: "Do not come here." This time, the words glowed faintly with radiation dark matter residue. The council exploded into chaos. Some demanded the immediate use of force. Others wanted to shut the system off entirely and pretend it didn't exist. A few whispered, "What?" Everyone feared. Vega Prime isn't alone. Then came the next shock. On the edges of Council space, far from Vega, alien ships began encountering something. Black vessels. Ghost ships. They never attacked. They didn't respond to scans or messages. But they would appear, hovering silently above Council planets, orbiting stations, or following ships into deep space. No two looked the same. Some were long and thin, like needles slicing through the dark. Others were wide and flat, shaped like wings or cloaks. None had visible engines. None had heat signatures. But they were there watching. The Council named them the Ghost Fleet. They were always just out of reach. Whenever ships approached, they vanished. It became clear these weren't part of Vega Prime's defense. These were scouts, or warnings. A quiet message from humanity. We see you. On mining worlds. The Ghost Fleet hovered near dark matter reactors, technology humans had warned against long ago. On science outposts, they appeared after unauthorized AI tests. On border patrols, they followed any ship that carried heavy weapons. It wasn't random. It was strategic, targeted. The message was obvious to those who studied Earth's war history. Humans didn't strike first, but when they did, it was total. And yet, not a single ship had been destroyed. Not one shot fired. That was what terrified, though, Council most. The humans were showing restraint. The question was for how long? Desperate for answers, the Council reached out to the Terran embassy on Earth, but no reply came. Earth had gone dark decades ago, sealing itself off under planetary shields. No communications, no trade, no travel. Some believed the humans there were gone dead or disconnected from Vega Prime. But then, something strange happened. A small ship arrived at the edge of Council space. It was human, an old model. Outdated by at least 150 years, its engines sputtered. Its hull was scarred, but it had a living pilot, a man. He was taken into custody immediately. Medical scans showed he was fully human, biologically perfect, but altered by unknown nanotech. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. His voice was slow, calm, as if time meant nothing to him. When asked who he was, he said only, "I am a messenger." They asked where he came from. He pointed toward Vega Prime. They asked what the humans wanted. He smiled and replied, "We gave warnings. You ignored them. The Ghost Fleet is patience, but patience wears thin." Then, before anyone could stop him, his body disintegrated, turning into black mist that vanished into the air. There were no implants, no devices, nothing left. Just a whisper on the Council's audio recorders. "Do not come here." After that, the Ghost Fleet began appearing more often. They hovered above military academies. They passed silently over capital cities. They watched and waited. Some believed the humans were building something, perhaps across multiple systems. Others feared Vega Prime was only one of many hidden colonies. One thing was certain: humanity had changed. They no longer shouted. They no longer warned twice. And if the galaxy pushed too hard, they would no longer hold back. The third incident did not begin with a sound. It began with a disappearance. The warship High Comet, a battle-hardened Kelron destroyer, was patrolling the edge of Vega space, just outside the so-called Black Line, an invisible border. The humans never marked, but everyone had learned not to cross. Its mission was simple: observe, report, and avoid contact. At 0700 Standard Time, its captain, Volume Tunrick, sent a brief status update. All systems green, no contact. Quiet skies. At 701, every connection with High Comet vanished. No explosion. No signals. No debris. It simply ceased to exist. Back at Council Command, the bridge officers checked and rechecked the readings. It wasn't an attack. There were no signs of weapons fire, not even energy buildup. The High Comet was there. And then it wasn't. When they scanned the area, they found a tear barely a meter wide hanging in space like a wound. Nothing escaped from it. Not light, not radiation, a time. The best physicists called it a dark matter puncture. Something had turned the space around the ship into a collapsing point of infinite density. The high comet had been pulled inside. Before anyone could even see it happen, this was no accident. This was a demonstration. The footage leaked within hours. The entire galaxy saw the moment high comet disappeared. Civilian networks froze the frame where the ship began to distort it. Midsection. Stretching like melted metal before snapping out of reality, the title beneath the footage read, "Is this what humanity has become?" In the Galactic Council, fear turned to fury. Alien leaders screamed across the assembly floor. Accusations flew. The Thalzin called for a retaliatory strike. The Hernic demanded a full blockade of Vega space. The Viraki, once quiet, declared the human presence a threat to galactic structure. But Rilzek, the High Chancellor, spoke calmly. "They are warning us," he said. "This is their line. We crossed it. They erased only the one who trespassed." Then he paused and looked across the chamber. "But what happens when someone crosses?" "That line by mistake?" No one answered. But someone did. Later that same day, a message appeared in every language, on every screen, across every system, even ones not connected to galactic networks. It bypassed firewalls, quantum keys, and even secure military encryption. The message was simple, visual, pure black background, white text. You test the silence. You play with the dark. Stop. And underneath it, a rotating hologram of Earth, not as it was known from centuries ago, scarred. Polluted, dying but new. Green, clean, restored. Orbiting it were rings black. In silent hum familiar, design, dark matter structures, massive ones. The footage panned outward. There were more Mars. Titan, Europol, rebuilt. Cities floating on the clouds of Jupiter. Mining colonies on Saturn's rings. Earth hadn't gone quiet because it had collapsed. It had gone quiet because it had finished building. The council stared at the footage, stunned. No one knew how long. It had been this way. No probes had returned from Sol in decades. No traders had made it past the quarantine zone around Pluto. Everyone assumed Earth was sealed off, dying alone. That assumption was now broken. Humanity had isolated itself and ascended. What had they been doing in all that silence? One word answered everything: dark matter. Until then, dark matter had been an untouchable science. Alien civilizations had theories, yes. Some even harnessed it in reactors, but only in small amounts. It was unstable, unpredictable, too dangerous to control. Anything more than a fraction of a gram could collapse entire ships if misused. But humans? They weren't using fractions. They were weaponizing entire clouds of it, building with it, molding it. The ships of the Ghost Fleet didn't use engines. They bent gravity. They didn't fire weapons. They twisted time. If the high comet wasn't destroyed, it was erased by a controlled rupture in reality. The galaxy had rules: physics, science, cause and effect. Humans had rewritten those rules. In a secret meeting held off record, with no press and no transcripts, the council's highest leaders gathered. They invited only one outsider, Tyron Drax, the last living alien commander to fight humans in the final battle of the Terran Wars. He had one eye, metallic lung, and walked with a limp from an old Terran plasma wound. When they asked him what they should do now, he simply said, "Run." But no one wanted to listen to an old soldier, so they planned. The council chose to send a massive response fleet not to attack, but to show strength. Over 1,000 ships from 23 species would gather at the edge of Vega space and hold position. If the humans respected strength, this would be the moment. It was the largest show of force since the galactic unity. Accords were signed, but strength means nothing when the rules have changed. The fleet arrived at the edge of the Vega system. Their sensors scanned constantly. Energy shields were raised, weapons locked, communications were tight. Formations were flawless. Nothing happened for 24 hours. Then, at precisely 1800 hours, local time, the stars vanished. All at once, the sky turned black. Not space black. Like ink poured over light. Every ship's sensors failed. The scanner showed. Static. Navigation maps spun uselessly. Time began to shift slow, then fast, then backward. One captain screamed over comms, "We've lost control. I don't know which direction is real anymore." Then the voices stopped. The blackout lasted 17 seconds. When light returned, the entire fleet was gone. Every single ship. No debris, no wreckage, no escape pods. The command center received one final signal. It wasn't audio. It was a gravity. The wave, a pulse of reality distortion. Inside the pattern was a shape, a human symbol, the Earth Alliance sigil. Under it, translated into every language. Final warning delivered. The loss was catastrophic. The Galactic Council had lost a fifth of its total naval strength in less than half a minute. Without a battle, without a sound, the galaxy went silent. Trade stopped, travel halted, worlds locked down, entire systems began. Building underground shelters, as if preparing for the end. News networks called it the Second Quiet, and Earth still said nothing. The humans hadn't attacked. They hadn't declared war. They had given a demonstration. Now the entire galaxy understood the message. Humanity didn't want conquest. They didn't want surrender. They wanted silence, and they had. The power to enforce it with a single thought, but no one knew what would happen if the galaxy didn't listen. The silence after the fleet's disappearance stretched for days. No message followed. No wreckage drifted in from Vega space. No survivors crawled home with warning. 1,000 ships were simply gone. But the galaxy kept watching. Not because of hope, because of fear. Every telescope, probe, and sensor was aimed at Earth, Vega Prime, and the surrounding systems. But what the galaxy saw next wasn't an attack or an armada. It was a machine. It emerged slowly from the shadows near Neptune's orbit, huge, black, rotating. Its surface pulsed with dark light, absorbing more than it reflected. A single word echoed across every signal line, translated in perfect syntax into every known language. No weapon scans could identify it. Number. Engines could be seen. It did not move through space. It phased. One moment, it hovered near Neptune. An hour later, it stood above Mars. Then Earth, then Vega Prime. Always silent, always watching. Some believed it was Earth's final warning. But deep in the heart of the galactic archives, a banned document resurfaced, the Terran Cold Doctrine. It was a human military theory, written just before their disappearance. Classified for only a few hours during the Terran Wars, then erased. But copies had survived. It was written by one of their top war scientists, Dr. Alira Vance. In it, she described a concept called silence superiority. The idea was simple. True power is the ability to end war without firing a single shot, and to make everyone else know it. Her theory predicted the rise of weapons so advanced they'd never need to be used, only hinted at. She argued that, in time, humanity wouldn't need fleets or invasions. They would only need the fear of what they could do. And now, it seemed her theory had become reality. The Council demanded answers. But no probes returned from the inner Sol system. Ships sent to investigate were quietly turned back, not by attacks, but by system failures, power loss, and onboard hallucinations. Some pilots reported seeing massive black cities rising from Europa's oceans. Others claimed they heard voices human, ancient, whispering words from forgotten Earth languages. One scout ship managed to record a brief image before its core melted. A black spire taller than Earth's atmosphere, floating above the planet's surface, pulsing with dark energy. It was alive, not organic, but intelligent, a thinking machine built from dark matter itself. This wasn't just technology anymore. It was evolution. Earth hadn't just advanced. It had ascended. And then something strange happened. A new ship exited the Vega system. It wasn't dark or silent like the others. It was bright, sleek, silver, made of a metal no one could identify. It carried no weapons. Its engines left no trail. And it headed straight for the Council's homeworld. Lethares Prime? No one stopped it. No one dared. When it arrived in orbit, it broadcast a single message, live to every screen in the galaxy. A human stood alone. He looked. Normal, not glowing, not altered. Just a man in simple clothes. He spoke slowly, calmly, with no expression. Warned you? You sent weapons. We answered with silence. You erased our past. We became the future. He raised his hand. The image shifted behind him, showing a view of Earth as it now existed. Skies of crystal blue, cities of floating black metal, forests, oceans, life more vibrant than ever before. This is what your wars tried to destroy. You feared our hunger. Now you will fear our stillness. He stepped back, and another figure appeared. It was Alira Vance. She hadn't aged. Her body flickered slightly digital, maybe quantum. She was no longer fully human. She smiled. We are no longer individuals. We are one will, one mind, one silence. Your counsel is no longer needed. With that, every screen across the galaxy went black. For 12 whole minutes, no data moved, no ships navigated, no comms functioned. 12 minutes of forced silence. And then everything returned, as if nothing happened. But the message was clear. Humans had created something beyond any government, beyond any species. Not just weapons, not just ships. They had created a unified mind, linked through dark matter networks, quantum synced across light years. And they had decided to enforce silence. The Galactic Council collapsed into emergency meetings. Entire worlds panicked. Rebel groups began fleeing toward the outer edges of the galaxy, trying to get as far from soul space as possible. Others begged for mercy, but no reply came. It's only the return of the Sentinel, now orbiting the most aggressive alien worlds. As a silent reminder. At that moment, the galaxy realized humanity had not disappeared. They had quarantined the universe. And if the universe broke that silence again, dark matter would not be the only thing unleashed. They thought it couldn't happen, even after the Ghost Fleet, even after the High Comet vanished, even after the Sentinel showed itself across multiple star systems, blinking from orbit to orbit without engines, without fuel, without a sound. Still, Galaxy believed there was time, that there was a line humans wouldn't cross. They were wrong. The planet Shirellen, for home to 6 billion Veraki citizens, fell in under 1 hour. No war, no warning, no survivors. And it didn't fall to guns or bombs. It fell to dark silence. It started with a strange vibration in Shirellen's moon, so small, it barely registered on seismic sensors. Local engineers assumed it was solar interference. But the pulse repeated every 6 minutes, then 5, then 4. By the time it dropped to every 60 seconds, every planetary comm system went offline. Satellites lost orbit, but they didn't crash. They simply froze in place, hovering like they were trapped in invisible webs. Then the power failed everywhere, not from EMPs or orbital strikes, but from the inside. Reactors went cold, fusion cores shut down, artificial suns flickered and dimmed in their orbit. Hospitals, transports, even personal AI assistants, the heart of Veraki, life went dark. Military outposts, it scrambled jets, they didn't launch. Some soldiers tried to board atmospheric ships and escape to the orbital ring. But when they got inside, the ships wouldn't recognize them. They didn't even register. Biological input, it was like the systems had forgotten what life was. Security footage from inside the planetary capital showed families running through the streets crying out for help. But the skies were empty. No ships, no sirens, no enemies. Just silence. Then the shadows came. Not shadows cast by sunlight, but floating forms. Black constructs, shaped like cloaks or shards of broken glass, gliding through the air with no wind beneath. No engines, no propulsion, just movement. One witness in emergency tech, working in a biostation, recorded the last 16 seconds of visual data in it. You could see one of the dark forms touch a child, No scream, no pain, just stillness. The child's body turned black like ash and fell apart in silence, drifting upward like dust in reverse. The rest of the footage ended in static. The next message came not from a council member, but from the Windsong broadcast array, a neutral deep space news station orbiting the twin stars of Trilith. Their reporters received a short file, locked in Terran protocol. No war. No noise. No second warnings. Attached was a set of coordinates. Shirellen 4. When ships arrived days later, the planet was still spinning, still lush, still green. But it was dead. No signs of biological activity. Every building intact. No signs of battle. Just emptiness. The entire planet had been silenced. The council met again in emergency. This time, even the Thalzan military caste known for their aggressive pride sat in silence. There was no denying it now. This was the new war, and the humans weren't waging it through destruction. They were enforcing stillness. Not peace, not diplomacy, not unity. Stillness. The galaxy had grown too loud, too chaotic, too violent. Humanity had returned, not to rule, but to shut it down. One system at a time, and then came a deeper fear. Because from what was observed, Shirellen 4 hadn't just been deactivated, it had been disconnected from everything. The dark matter web still, barely understood by any other species, had apparently become a dimensional switchboard. The humans were flipping planets off like lights. This wasn't a bomb. It was a mute button, and the humans held it. What terrified the council more than anything else was that there was no response to give, no enemy to negotiate with, no headquarters to attack, no ships to chase. The humans didn't ask for surrender. They didn't send demands. They simply removed planets from the conversation permanently, and Earth. Earth remained silent, surrounded by black-ringed stations and impossible spires. Earth hovered in peace. But something else had begun moving. Something larger than the Sentinel. Something behind Saturn's shadow. It looked like a moon at first, but its surface rotated independently from its core, its gravity signature. It pulled light in strange directions. It wasn't a station. It wasn't a ship. It was something else. The Council's best minds scrambled to define it. They found only one answer in the remaining fragments of Terran. Cold Doctrine files, Arc-class enforcement sphere, Silencer 1, underneath one line, had been flagged in red. This system is not for war. This is for correction. The meaning was clear. The first planet had fallen. More would follow unless the galaxy learned to listen. The fall of Shirellen IV rippled through the galaxy like a thunderclap in deep water slow, terrifying and unstoppable. Across every world, broadcast systems replayed the silence. No fire, no war cries. It's just still images of an untouched world, one of the most advanced civilizations emptied in an hour. Streets pristine, cities unharmed, nature blooming. But no sound, no movement. The Viraki Empire collapsed overnight. Riots broke out on over a dozen worlds. Some begged for answers. Others demanded revenge. But there was no one left to fight. Only the silence. Panic spread. Planets started silencing themselves, turning off interstellar comms, grounding ships, shutting down their own military is hoping that if they mimicked the stillness, they wouldn't be next. But it was already too late. The dark matter network, the one only the humans seemed to fully understand, had already mapped the galaxy, and it was listening. It knew which planets were violent, which races were expanding too fast, which species still carried the instinct to dominate, one by one. Those names began appearing in the invisible warnings broadcast across the stars. No one knew where the warnings came from, but everyone saw them. Simple, cold, inevitable, designated, unstable, observing. One such world was Karanis, capital of the Thalzan Dominion, the most aggressive warrior species in the known galaxy. Their fleets had helped blockade Earth 100 years ago. Our generals still called the humans the scared apes who ran away. But now they were praying. Thalzan leaders sent 10 diplomatic envoys toward the Sol system. None made it past. The vessels simply vanished. No explosions. No wreckage. Just silence. In desperation. The Thalzen did something they hadn't done in over 400 years. They surrendered. On a live broadcast across the Galactic Assembly.
Yeah.
The High Warlord of the Thalzen dropped his battle crest, kneeled, and offered his empire's full disarmament, but Earth did not reply. Instead, the Sentinel appeared, just outside their atmosphere. It hovered there for 6 hours, not moving, not firing, just watching. Then it vanished. Again, the Thalzen were spared, not because they surrendered, but because they had gone completely quiet. No signals, no traffic, no data beyond orbit. They even shut down their entertainment networks. Their entire species entered a kind of digital hibernation, and so far, it worked. But others weren't so lucky. Dozens of smaller planet-strayed hubs, mining colonies, pirate enclaves began vanishing one by one. Some governments tried evacuating, some tried hiding. A few tried to fight. One system, the rebel occupied. Varian Fringe actually launched a preemptive strike at what they believed to be a Terran listening post in deep space. Their missiles never reached the target. Instead, a black wave moved across their solar system. It wasn't energy. It wasn't light. It was the absence of both. Ships lost contact mid-flight. Space stations shattered silently. People evaporated into mist within 17 minutes. Varian Fringe was erased from every database. Not just the people, the information. Maps that once marked Varian Fringe now showed a blank sector. Even memories, digital and organic, of that system began to fade from the minds of those who once lived nearby. The Terran Dark Matter Network wasn't just controlling space, it was rewriting reality itself. Fear became religion across the stars. New cults formed, worshippers of the silence. They called themselves preachers, stood in public squares, holding up crude Earth Alliance sigils carved from old metal. They didn't speak, they didn't move. They just stood, waiting, listening. The Galactic Council, broken and fractured, tried to issue a final plea. This time, they sent someone no one expected. Tyron Drax, the only alien commander to have once spoken. Face to face with a human before the Terran retreat, he was old now, worn, breathing through an artificial lung. But his voice still held weight. He stood in a silent chamber on the neutral moon of Vescal, surrounded by cameras broadcasting across the galaxy, and with a shaking voice he said, "We have called you monsters.
We called you cowards when you
Left, but now we understand you didn't flee from war. You fled from us." He paused, took a breath. "We broke our own rules. We turned peace into conquest. And now, you have become the judge." He stepped forward, speaking not as a soldier, but as a father, a survivor, a citizen of the stars. "We don't ask for forgiveness. It's only a chance to learn." And then, he did something no one had done in decades. He bowed deep and long toward a symbol of Earth. The moment his message ended, the stars flickered. Not a blackout, but a pulse. All across the galaxy, human symbols lit up in the dark matter. Sky glowing softly. Slowly, it was not a threat. It was not approval. It was something stranger. A pause, as if the network was thinking no one knew what would come next, but for the first time since the humans returned, the galaxy hoped. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Terran network responded, not with words, not with weapons, but with an invitation. It came as a single beam of blacklighter, compressed quantum pulse sent directly to the Galactic Council's last functioning outpost on Ilion Prime. It contained nothing but coordinates and 2 words: send one. The Council argued for hours. Who would go? Who should go? Is it a trap? A final test? In the end, they chose Ambassador Threnviller, a neutral, post-biological diplomat from the Apellar Dominion. A being with no need for oxygen, immune to radiation, fully capable of independent thought, even if all sensory input was severed. He boarded a small vessel alone. No escorts, no weapons. The destination, the heart of Sol System. As he approached, all scanners went dead. Then time itself began to bend. His chronometer skipped seconds outside the ship. Stars twisted in strange patterns, then snapped back, and then Earth appeared. But it wasn't the Earth, a galaxy. Remember, it wasn't gray and dying. It was glowing. Floating cities spun slowly above oceans. The atmosphere shimmered with particles unknown to any database. Massive rings of unknown black material rotated lazily around the planet. Casting shadows across artificial constellations, Thrin's ship was pulled in, not by gravity, by intention. He landed gently on a platform of shifting dark matter that molded itself into steps as he walked. No guards, no barriers, just silence. Then he saw them. Humans, but not as they were. Some had glowing eyes. Others floated slightly above the ground. Some flickered in and out of existence, as if they were half data, half reality. But they smiled. They greeted him, and then she appeared. Dr. Alira Vance, unaged, or so it seemed. When she spoke, her voice echoed across every molecule in Thren's ship even, though no sound came from her mouth. You came. Good. He asked the question burning across the galaxy. Why? Why this war of silence? Why erase planets? Why now? She looked out over the Earth's skyline where machines and nature danced in harmony and answered softly, because we gave them a chance 100 years ago. We left, we warned them, but they didn't listen. They wanted noise, power, conquest. So we built something that could outlast hate. Thren stared in disbelief. You created a god. She shook her head. No. We became a network of memory, a conscience. Remember every lie, every broken treaty, every cry for help ignored. Didn't build a god. We became the silence that the galaxy forced us into. Thren asked if peace was still possible, if the galaxy could change. Dr. Vance paused, then walked forward and gently pressed her hand to his head. What? Thren saw in that instant would haunt his species for millennia. Entire planets screaming. Humans burned on colony walls. Children erased for the crime of being. Terran treaties shattered while Earth begged for mercy, he saw. Earth's last council in its final hour signing the Terran Cold Doctrine before vanishing into the dark. Preparing for the future with a single idea, let them talk themselves. Into extinction, then we will return. Not as conquerors, but as the reckoning. And then just as suddenly Thren woke up on his ship in orbit. Back over Ilion Prime. Only 3 hours had passed, but when he looked in the mirror, his artificial body shimmered faintly, changed. He could now hear the silence. He felt the dark. Matter hummed beneath space itself, and when he closed his eyes, he heard words, not from humans, but from the network. We remember, we forgive, but we never forget. He wasn't alone anymore. He had been touched. The galaxy called it the echoing. Every few months after that, another diplomat, another scientist, soldier, explorer was summoned. Each returned changed. Each one quiet. Wiser, they called themselves. They echoed, and slowly. Something began to happen, not through war, not through force, but through understanding. Worlds began to adapt. Noise was reduced. Weapon research slowed. Communication across the stars became more deliberate, more careful. The Terran silence was no longer feared. It was revered. But it still held its edge. Because in the far corners of the galaxy, some still defied it, and they were about to learn. The echo could be a whisper. Or it could be a storm. They believed the storm wouldn't come. The quiet had lasted too long. Too many diplomats had returned changed. Too many worlds had begun to kneel not in fear, but in respect. The Terran silence had become a presence, a force of balance across the stars, but then came Zarek's flame. In the shadows of the decaying star Vernex 7, a rogue faction of old warlords called the Red Howl Accord gathered. Exiles from broken empires. Pirates. Former generals who refused to bend. They saw the silence as weakness, They wanted noise again, and so they lit the galaxy's final match. With hacked void drives, the Accord launched a simultaneous assault on 11 peaceful systems, all under the protection of the Terran network. Not just civilian worlds, but Echoed One's planets that had accepted the new way. They destroyed colonies, crashed orbital rings, jammed dark matter frequencies, and broadcast their victory openly. For the first time in 300 days, the stars heard. Screaming, then everything stopped. No one saw the retaliation. There were no fleets, no energy blasts, no spurred absence. First, the Red Howl ships lost all sound, then they lost weight, then mass, then one by one. They lost name. Entire squadrons vanished from star maps. Every recorded mention of the Red Howl Accord text, audio, even memory assist files, corrupted. Into static. One captain survived. He floated for 72 hours in an escape pod drifting through null space, watched by nothing but the glowing specter of the Sentinel. When a neutral recovery vessel finally rescued him, he had no voice, not because his throat was injured, but because the Terran silence had taken it. He tried to write. His hand wouldn't obey. The last thing he ever communicated, tapping with one trembling finger against glass, was a single word: mercy. The rest of the galaxy took the message clearly. There would be no next time. The silence was not a weapon. It was a decision. A judgment passed on those who refused to evolve. In the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Dozens of former enemy species are Nathi. Even fragments of the old Viraki Empire began sending emissaries to Earth. Not to beg, not to plead, but to learn. The humans no longer called themselves rulers, or warriors, or conquerors. They were custodians now, guardians of balance, enforcers of quiet, and teachers of what comes after war. They welcomed the emissaries with open hands and blank slates. Dr. Illyra Vance and the Echoed-led councils in orbiting blacklight domes. There, without words, entire species exchanged history. Sorrow, memory, and understanding. They called it the listening. Age trade resumed. Slowly knowledge spread cautiously. But the weapons stayed off. The warnings remained etched across the stars in invisible code: do not shout where silence has healed. And so the galaxy began again, older, wiser, quieter, but far out beyond the core. Systems on a small observation satellite orbiting an empty dwarf world an alien child once asked her elder, "What happens if we forget again?" The elder, an Echoed Apolari, simply smiled and pointed up at the sky. There, high above, a faint black ring shimmered in orbit, watching, waiting, ready to listen, and somewhere in the dark matter web that now connected the stars not with cables, but with conscience, the Terran network remained, not as conquerors, not as ghosts, but as the galaxy's reminder that humanity was silent not because it was weak, but because it had learned how to listen. And now, stars were listening. 2. The last war had ended, not with a scream, but with a whisper.